Hi, everyone. Welcome to what recruiters look for on resumes for engineering jobs and internships. My name is Reve Hitt, and I am one of the assistant directors and career counselors for engineering and physical sciences in the Career Center. Today, I am joined with some amazing recruiters, and I want to just thank them up front here for giving their valuable time today to be here. We are going to cover pretty much every section of a resume and what you can include in that. And at the end, we'll have some time for you students to ask your own questions. So to kick us off, I do have a poll, and I just wanted to share, there is no perfect way to put together a resume. You all have valuable skills and experiences, and a resume will look different for each person. So hopefully today you'll take away some tips that'll help you with your personal resume and how to keep it relevant to the company that you're applying for, with including your relevant skills. So why don't I start with this poll? 1 second as I figure that out. And this is just to get a sense of where everyone's at with this topic before we dive in. So I'm going to launch that poll now. And while you're doing that, I will stop sharing my screen so we can get a sense of who's in the room. All right, we'll take another minute or so for the poll. I see we have some responses. All right, let's see where we're at here. So it looks like folks primarily somewhat agree or disagree that they understand how recruiters view coursework and GPA on resumes. So we're definitely going to cover that topic today. And then when it comes to understanding projects and experience to include on a resume, it looks like we've got some varied responses here. Most people agree or somewhat agree that they understand. But then in terms of confidence, it looks like we need some more confidence to submit a resume. So I hope that this session today will help boost your confidence. All right, let's stop sharing. And let's get started with some introductions. So yeah, as I mentioned, I work in the Career Center with engineering students, and I will turn it over to Jesse to introduce yourself next.
Yeah, so my name is, there we go, Jesse Merk. I am an early talent recruiter for SAP. I also recruit for our internship program. The questions was, what kind of jobs do we hire for? And obviously plenty of engineering roles amongst, you know, any other board area you can think of that would be at a big company. So.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah. Next, Karen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Karen Neth. I'm the Director of Recruiting. And WISE, we are a Series B consumer products and services startup. We're based here in Kirkland, Washington. And we hire for, a lot of people don't realize that we actually have a pretty big software team here at WISE. And a lot of our AI and our software teams are all based here in the Kirkland area. We are a remote first company right now. And so hoping to have the opportunity to answer some of your questions that y'all have. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Karen. And next we have Tom.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom with Tom Manriquez with Pacific Gas and Electric. A lot of people may know the name, but one of the largest utilities in the United States, powering a number of different ways of gas and electric through our power generation and distribution services, roughly 25,000 employees with a service territory stretching from Eureka, California, all the way down to Bakersfield, with Pacific Gas and Electric assets and power generating facilities throughout the state, and 16 million customers that we serve. That's 1 in 20 Americans. We primarily, 84% of our, I would say, summer internships and early emerging talent openings for recent college graduates are STEM related. So civil, mechanical, electrical, computer science, chemistry are the roles and degrees that we look for pretty intensively here at PG&E. Look forward to talking to everybody.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. So let's get started with the top of a resume, the objective. Karen, would you like to share, what do you think of an objective? Should students include it? If so, what's good to include in that?
I think that's a really good question. I feel that the objective of a resume can be really important and impactful. I don't see objectives on every resume, but I will say that when I do see one, I do want to take a closer look to really hear and read what it is that that person is trying to get across. So sometimes I feel that some people put an objective and just want to throw in keywords. And I think to really make an objective impactful is to make sure that when you're putting one together, that there's a summary and there's passion, and that you include your domain in what it is that you feel that you can bring to the organization based on your skills and experience. So I feel that if you have something that you can create a summary in a domain, and you can really deliver that message in a short paragraph, include it. But if you feel that it's only going to be a one-liner, then I would say leave it off. Then it's not really required. It's nice to see something on the top of the resume, but you really want to be thoughtful in putting together the objective on a resume, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. It sounds like it's good to add if it's going to add something to your resume. Otherwise, if you could use that space for something else, then it might be better to do that. What about you, Jesse and Tom? Do you have any additional thoughts on an objective?
Yeah, for me, I think you just said it right. If you don't have one, I wouldn't put one or try to force one, but it really gives you as a student, especially if you're looking for an internship or an emerging talent type role, it can really match what you want, right? You're telling the reader that who you are and what your objective and summary are, and how hopefully it's tied to the company objectives and goals and that job description. So you're always tying that job description, or you're almost customizing every resume you do, but you're really trying to tie, that company, mission statement. It's changing every single time. It changes quite a bit in terms of, the mission statement, employee value prop, purpose. But do a little research on the company, try to tie it to what you want to do, in the role that you want to do and what you want to bring every single day. That's my 2 cents.
I would echo that. Make sure it's relevant. I just reviewed a couple things today. They were objectives that were very generic and written towards like a business development role, yet they had applied for a developer role. So obviously there wasn't very much thought put into that, and we can tell that very quickly. So be purposeful if you're going to do it, I guess is what I would say.
Great advice. I think throughout this presentation, you'll probably hear us say, be relevant and tailored over and over and over again. One of the most important things when it comes to a resume.
I guess I would also just add, I've never rejected out a candidate for not having one. So.
Yeah, thanks for adding that. It isn't always necessary, right? Unless it's going to help convey something that the rest of your resume wouldn't already, or help you tailor to the company to show your skill set. So next, let's talk about the education section on a resume. I would like to hear from all of you what kind of coursework you generally like to see for your internships and full-time roles, and how your company views GPA, if you happen to have requirements or not, or generally what you look for there. So Tom, would you like to start us off with this one?
Yeah, so we'll start with the GPA question first. We get that a lot, right? Should we put our GPA on? Is it a requirement for us for PG&E? It's a desired qualification to have a 3.0. It's not required. We have desired and we have required prereqs, right? In terms of the role and that you're applying to. And so it's a desired qualification for us, and it's desired as a 3.0 because we're not isolating the student that is working 3 part-time jobs, that's supporting their family, that's carrying a full load plus. And so, you know, I would probably recommend if it's less than a 3.0, I wouldn't put it on your resume. And that's just personal what I would recommend, but I'd love to hear from everybody else in terms of what they think. But we don't have a requirement. You do need to be in strong or in good academic standing with your school, and we'll check that with our background check. And most companies will do a background check, checking not only that but other things. In terms of putting desired subjects or school, I think what's a coursework, 100%. So if you're studying mechanical engineering, for example, at Berkeley, and we love Berkeley because I'd say 27 to 28% of our internship class comes from Berkeley every single year. We always recommend that you put your degree, the year that you're graduating, in the related courses, right? So if you're a mechanical engineer and you're studying mechanical manufacturing processes, fluid dynamics, finite element analysis, differential equations, and other related courses that are core courses, not just prerequisites to get into upper division. But if you're a junior and senior, put those heavy courses. And again, it relates to the job description, desired qualifications that company is looking for that role. And so you want to cater it to that role. So those are my 2 cents. Love to hear from Jesse or somebody else.
Likewise. I mean, anything you can include is great, right? We don't need to know about your gen ed like writing course, though. Of course, like that's not necessary. But to have those different courses in there, especially when we pass that information along to the hiring manager to review, like, hey, here's 5 people that we think are solid. If 3 of those people have courses listed that are very relevant to the position, the hiring manager is going to be able to weed out and say, like, hey, these 3 have at least a baseline knowledge. Like, let's spend half an hour chatting with them first, right? So again, no right or wrong way, but definitely if it's relevant, include it. If it's a certain type of development, like, and you got to have that for the job description, put that on there so we know that you have that course. So it's going to save the hiring manager, us as the recruiters, some time in like navigating through, and kind of bring it to the top of that list. But also don't include every single course, right? Like we don't want to see all 30 courses that you took like your last 2 years or whatever.
I echo what, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Karen. I was just going to pass it on to you.
Thanks, Reve. I was just going to share that I echo what my colleagues here have shared with Tom and Jesse, and just like to add that I would say for WISE, we don't have a GPA requirement, but if it is less than a 3.0, I probably wouldn't list it. Just so that way, when the interviewer is reviewing your resume, they're focusing in on your capabilities versus a number, right? Because I definitely think that there have been people that I have engaged with that have less than a 3.0 after they've shared, through conversation, have been amazing engineers. So as far as coursework goes, definitely go off of what the role that you're interviewing for, because I know there's, as a software engineer, you probably take both electrical engineering and computer science courses and upper division courses. So definitely do interchange what your coursework is. And if you ever question what classes or coursework that you're going to include, always go with the classes that you feel strongest in and the domain that you feel that you can speak most to. Because as a recruiter, you know, when you're going and wrapping up and starting conversations, you typically want to look at what's on top of your resume. And if you're able to really shine through that experience, through your domain, then I think that that really speaks very well, and you'll feel more confident during the interview as well.
I would like to add, too often I see like they graduate in 2022, right? But we don't know if that's May or December, or, you know, you got to take the summer term. So include that month and that year. Reason being, if there's 150 applicants for one internship or one FTE role or something, quite frankly, we just don't have the time of day to call every single person if it's not included on there, right? So that's critical. Include the month that you graduate.
Thanks, Jesse. I see that you put a comment in the chat here. Can you describe what you mean?
I was just trying to mimic what they said, and obviously it makes sense in the chat, but I'm mimicking what they said about GPA.
Okay, so does SAP have a 3.0?
No. There's no requirement by any means, but
okay.
Like if it's below a 3.0, don't bother putting that. It might deter us. That might deter hiring managers depending on, you know, their cultural norms and the way they view academics and the way they view achievement standards and all that stuff. So, I mean, if it's great, put it on. That's something to be proud of. But.
Gotcha. So it sounds like, you know, students are definitely, they can still be considered depending on skills and experience, even if they don't have that GPA minimum. But it's better to just only include it if you meet that requirement. Is that accurate?
So just to make it clear, there's no, as long as you are in good academic standing at your school, and that's typically, you know, over a 2.0, I think, right? Good academic standing, 2.5. We don't have a minimum. We have a desired qualification. It'd be nice if you had a 3.0, but it's not required that you have. You just need to be in strong academic or in academic, not be in academic probation.
If that's the
Sounds
case,
like I've been
probably
there.
focus on school versus an internship.
What was that, Jesse?
I said, if that's the case, you should probably focus on school rather than your internship.
Right.
Yes.
Well, yeah, thank you, Tom, for clarifying that it's more of a recommendation for PG&E at least. All right, and then I just wanted to ask specifically, do you all look for certain classes on resumes, or is it just whatever the student has taken that's relevant to the role?
So, yes, if we're looking for, if you're applying, just out of the blue, if you're applying for a civil engineering intern or a dam safety intern that we have very many every summer at our facilities, we would be looking for somebody who has done slope analysis or finite element analysis, right? So that would be listed in the job description. And so you'll have to take that and look through your classwork and where you've taken it and stick that in your resume underneath your degree. And so it highlights it for us.
Awesome. So once again, relate it to the job posting, right? You want to include information showing you have that relevant knowledge they're looking for. Lovely. All right, let's move on. Tom, can you share what kind of information is best for students to include in their skills section?
Yeah.
Should students also specify the level of proficiency that they have with their skills?
So great question. Let's talk about kind of the dynamic on the skills section itself first, right? The first couple big things about that skills section. And the first is really, it's an opportunity for somebody to really customize their resume in that skills section to match both your skills that you can highlight along with, again, the related job description and desired qualifications, minimum qualifications, and required qualifications in a job description. Second, most recruiters, most hiring managers are visual. They will pinpoint specific skills in a resume, by scanning it first and then doing a deep dive. And by pinpointing those skills, whether you break it out by hard skills or soft skills, you can really make an impact visually, which will yield a higher percentage of you getting a call from a recruiter and an interview. And so if you can match, that would be pretty key, at least what we see on our side. Now, in terms of what type of skills, right? Interpersonal skills, strong communication skills, all the soft skills, that'll be throughout your resume. I think you want to highlight your technical skills. And I'll give you an example. If you were a Marcom student or a business student and you needed to highlight social media platforms or content editing or graphic design, you would bucket those categories. And so you would put social media platforms and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. And then for content management, right, you would use something on Microsoft Office products, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. And then same thing for the graphic design, right? You just list it out, right? You would bucket it. But there's a number of different ways. We look either, right? You can bucket those skills I just mentioned, or you can list them through hard and soft skills. I saw a resume today that bucketed the skills, and it was very clean and visually, and I could pinpoint, what the job description said and what the resume, and I put the two together, and I sent out an email to give that person an interview. So, and reach out to them. So it's all about pinpointing, going back to really being visual and matching your skills with those that are in the job description. Love to hear from the panel.
Exact same thoughts, honestly. I would only add, I suppose, like if you're doing on a scale of like 1 to 5 or whatever, and you do dots or however you do it, maybe think about not including some of the skills that you're not proficient at. That's maybe not necessary, I suppose. So like if you have a skill set that you're like 1 out of 5 proficiency, that's something that maybe forgo, because that might forgo, the interview, which if that's like a skill set that you're not proficient in, and maybe you're going to do an internship, that's a learning opportunity, right? And that's something that can be discussed, and you can show through the interview like, hey, I'm eager to learn though. And because, attitude's over everything. You can kind of teach skill sets. So something to consider.
The only thing I would add from my colleagues here is know and be prepared for assessing your skills. So if expect the recruiter to ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, from not being proficient to being most proficient, where you would score yourself, and be prepared to answer why. There's a handful of people that will say, I score myself a 5. Well, sometimes that's not always, even if you're like a senior level candidate, very, very few people will say 5 because there's just so much that changes about skill sets and softwares and updates that take place that I almost want to feel like it's impossible to be perfect on some of these skill sets. So just be prepared to know kind of where your domain is and where the gaps might be and why you would rate yourself, whatever you decide to rate yourself, and why you didn't rate yourself higher. So know your skills, know where you personally are. And if you don't know where you are, then maybe that's when you would forego putting that on your resume.
Thanks, Karen. That's good to know that students will be asked about their proficiency levels. Is that something that is good to really lay out in a resume, kind of like you mentioned, Jesse, and how you've seen students do that?
I would say so. To be quite honest, depending on the role, especially for some of these developer type roles, we do have an assessment that's kind of a generic assessment that gets spit out to candidates if that's what the hiring manager wants. to help kind of navigate that skill set prior to even being considered for an interview, right? And so that's a way SAP kind of can, I don't want to say like weed out maybe candidates who aren't as proficient, but that's more or less the fact with FTE roles versus internship roles. A lot of times hiring managers know like interns are here to learn, we're here to teach. That's kind of the mindset, but yeah.
Thank you. All right, well, why don't we move on to, I guess, the meat and potatoes of the resume, projects and experience. I'm curious, to hear from all panelists on this as well, just because, this is really that part of that resume where you show your relevant skill set and how you've used it. So what do you all generally look for? What kinds of projects or experiences are going to help students be competitive? And if you could speak to both internships versus full-time roles, that would be great. Yeah, why don't we start with Karen on this one?
Absolutely, thank you. So for us, when we take a look at someone's resume or even during the interview process, we want to hear what impact you made on the project that you had listed on your resume. So we want to be able to hear not just like for you to summarize what project that was that you worked on, but also what your role you played and what kind of impact you made and what the team size looked like so we can get a good picture. But impact, I would say, would be the biggest thing that a lot of people do leave off of their resumes or during the interview process is really not knowing what impact that they delivered during that project or internship. And also, we also love hearing about challenges. So for us, a lot of problem solving. So challenges that they had during their project and deliverable and how they overcame some of those challenges. Thank you.
100% the impact and like the problem solving that went into that. That's huge because, sometimes you all have, say you all take the same course, right? You all did a similar project, but we want to know what that impact was that you had. And maybe you have a personal project on the side that you did or something. We want to know what kind of sets you apart and what, like we call it the X factor at SAP. And a lot of times in interviews, you'll be asked, not specifically what's your X factor, but like, what did you do? What did you contribute? How are you different from the other 30 graduates from your program,
So for us at PG&E, a lot of, 84% of the intern base are STEM related students, right? Mechanical, electrical, civil, computer science. And we look very much for those students who have done classroom projects, either on their own, ideally with a team, both, or individual. And we look for that's related to your discipline. And or not, right? We had a mechanical engineering student who one of their hobbies was working on cars, and that was one thing that the hiring team wanted to hear from that student, because when you work on a car and you're putting parts together and your mechanical systems, there's a lot to it, right? And the way that an engineer will think methodically, and so that person got the job last summer, and it was pretty cool. But definitely, if you do not have a project, volunteer for one, ask for the teacher, get something together, put it on paper, and then when you're asked about it, make sure you have a star-related interview type of question that will come to you, right? What was the situation? What were the tasks that were involved? What were the actions that you and the team had brought together to the table? And most importantly, what was the result? And if you can do that every single time on a project or with your job, you'll hit it out of the park every single time. My 2 cents.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's helpful to hear because I meet with students all the time who are worried that they don't have experience. But what you're doing in the classroom or even those personal projects you're doing on the side, that is going to show employers that you have the skills that they're looking for. I am curious. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I heard, confidence was a challenge. And let me tell y'all, SAP, PG&E, we're all here. Everybody on this call is here because of you. The school that you chose, the discipline that you chose to study. You are at the top university, public universities in the country. So not everybody goes to Berkeley. Not everybody graduates from Berkeley. So I'm telling you right now, you are very desired to come work at any one of these companies and more. And so have that confidence level in yourself. And yeah, you're going to send out 10, 15, maybe 20 resumes, and you might only get 3 or 4 or 5 calls. There are hundreds of students looking for summer internships. Don't be discouraged. All of us are going to give you our phone number, our email at the end of this. You can call us at any time. We'll do one-on-ones if you need any additional support, but have the confidence. I just wanted a little public service announcement from Tom.
Thanks, Tom. I want to like grab that clip of the recording and just post it all over now. That was perfect. Yeah, it's you all have so many things that you do in your lives, even things that aren't necessarily related. You would be surprised that your communication skills, your collaboration skills, people skills, even if it's not an engineering focused role, can still add value to your resume. I do have an impromptu question for you all, though, that wasn't planned. I'm curious, how important is it for students to have a previous internship to be competitive for your full-time roles?
For PG&E, it's a desired. We look for it. You know, we have a pipeline program here that we return our interns back for typically 1 or 2 summers, and then prior to graduation, 6 months, they're made an offer even before walking. And so it's pretty desired for us, but it's not required. But if you do have an internship, it certainly highlights good experience, but not required.
Same here. It's not a requirement, but it definitely will highlight and have you stand out. Because at Wise, we are pretty scrappy. We're 4 years old, so we're still in that startup mode, 0 to 1. And our interns make a really big impact and get to work on some really fun products, and have also had the opportunity to see some products get launched before they end their internships. So having that experience and knowing that you can navigate and have that experience of navigating in an internship role because you've done it before, I think that is a pretty big plus.
Yeah, likewise. Like a recent exception to that would be, not exception, I guess necessarily, but a recent example where they didn't have a previous internship. A student had developed some sort of like fitness app and sold it to somebody for a lot. I honestly don't even know why he was looking for a job. But like that's where he put all of his energy and focus during his last 3 years of school versus an internship. And he was able to explain the value of that experience in his interview, and then eventually got the FTE role. But
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to know that internships definitely are going to help make you competitive. Yeah. Definitely get an internship before you graduate. But in some situations, it's not necessary. All right. So Jesse, this next question is for you. I'm curious what you think about the difference between classroom projects and then personal projects or projects that students do outside the classroom. Does one have more value over the other?
Good question. Man, I hope this doesn't get perceived the wrong way, in my opinion. But I would say no. There's no necessarily like cut and dry value over one or the other. However, something I kind of look at, I guess, when I'm looking through resumes are classroom projects are mandatory, right? They're assigned to you. You have to do them. It is what it is. That's going to be something you're going to be able to talk about teamwork, what you learned, like practical application and all that kind of stuff, right? Your personal projects are going to show, again, I'm going to bring up that X factor piece, but they're going to bring up who you are as a person, what you're passionate about, where you care to put your extra energy. So while one might not have more value than the other, the personal projects give us more of an insight of who you are as a person beyond your academic work or your required classroom work. That's my opinion.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. It does show, initiative to do something on your own and passion for what you are studying to have the out of the classroom projects.
Yep.
Karen, this next question is for you. A lot of times students will have a leadership section on their resume. How important is it for students to have a section like that or to show those types of skills?
That's a really good question. I think that if you have had the opportunity to be in leadership and volunteer, definitely add it. I would say the only advice that I would give is don't have it overpower your resume. I think that having a balanced resume is really important. There are resumes that I've seen before where, their leadership volunteer work will supersede their experience. And that, I think, having a balanced resume, making sure you have a good balance of experience and then some leadership to show that you have some extracurricular activities that you care about and participate in. I think those are great, but don't let it overpower your resume, definitely.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They're definitely important skills, but your technical skills are really at the top of people's mind, right, when you're an engineering student.
Yes.
All right. Next, I have a question for you, Tom. What about sections on a resume like awards or hobbies, interests? What about those additional sections? How important are those?
Yeah, for PG&E, I can speak to, and I think for most enterprise companies, especially today, it gives you don't want to overdo it, right? You don't want to make it 80% of your resume, but it does give companies, hiring managers, recruiters, a little bit of who you are, right? Definitely awards, definitely honors, right? You want to list those. In terms of hobbies and interests, it gives a little bit about who you are and how you're going to play within that company culture to a degree, right? First glance, and something to talk about in the interview process once you get to that point. But I do want to talk about a few other things that people can also put in their resume, and it has to go with corporate responsibility, right? In terms of, for us, part of our purpose is connecting with our hometowns and our community. And so if you have volunteer experience, nonprofit experience, that goes quite a ways with us specifically. We've got our employee resource groups, affinity groups go back 50 years in some cases, being a 100-year-old company. And these employee resource groups connect with our communities with over 160 to 180 different events externally, right? Nonprofit, connecting with our community. So if you've got it, put it down. If you got a scholarship, put it down. And it's going to say a lot about who you are and how hard you've worked to get to where you are. And it'll reflect very highly on a resume. At least for us, that's I'd love to hear the panel and what they think. Student organizations too, make sure you list them. SHIP, NSBE, SWE, MESA, MEP, IEEE, list them. Put them down on your resume. Companies now more than ever have a diversity initiative. And if they're tied to an affirmative action plan and goals, and they're committed to diversity and inclusion and equity, where most companies are. But if you go to their website, they'll typically have their initiatives there, and it can really do a key. But list your organizations. Companies and recruiters want to know, and what your impact is within those organizations. Even if you're just a member, you're connecting.
Yeah, that can be a great addition to a leadership section, potentially. Have your student org work in there. All right, and then the last question I have is for you, Jesse, about project websites, links to maybe a portfolio or a GitHub. How important is it for students to have that?
Please, if you have it, include it. I have been reaching out today to probably 6 or 7 candidates that appear to be top candidates, but we have nothing, right? They're UX designers, so it's very niche. But I spent a couple hours today reaching out to them for work examples, for maybe something to their GitHub, or I mean, I think the LinkedIn's kind of a no-brainer at this point. Karen and Tom, would you agree? Include that. I mean, include the links. Make them hyperlinks too. That's so much easier for us. And I always say, like, your LinkedIn kind of, or your resume, like, it's on paper, right? But your LinkedIn, when we can click on that, like, it kind of showcases your story and showcases who you are, versus your resume is just, I mean, it's a resume, right? We learn a lot from that, but then you can click on that link to your resume or your LinkedIn or your portfolio, and you can kind of showcase that. You can showcase what's written in there. You can kind of show us whatever your objective is stating. We can see, like, that in practice, and that's really, really, really valuable when we're assessing who to move forward in interview processes and stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, and I can see how, it'd be really important for more design-oriented roles like UI, UX, but also helpful, it sounds like, for anyone else who wants to showcase their projects. Maybe include some visuals, a nice description with the impact of your work, and then add a link to that on your resume.
Totally.
Sounds good. Okay.
I don't know if we covered this yet or not, but definitely try to always keep your resume, especially if you're a new college grad, to one page.
Thanks, Karen. Yes, keep your resume to one page. Thank you for mentioning that. I do come across 2-page resumes every now and then. So that's a good reminder. All right, so at this point, we will open the floor for some questions, but I'm gonna do one more poll for you all, just so we can see how well we've been meeting our objectives today. So I'm gonna launch this poll. Please take a minute to complete that. And then this is also a great time to put your questions in the chat if you have any. So we'll just take a couple minutes for that.
To verify that question, we don't, at SAP at least, we don't have interns until at least they're done with their first year of school. So the summer after your first year, you're considered for our internship program, but not during. But we do hire interns year round, the bulk of which being in the summer. But yeah, unless you're done with your first year, you're not. Oh, that was a direct message to me, sorry. But for the general population, I guess it's good to know.
Yeah, thank you. That is good to know. Yeah, most internships that I've come across are usually for juniors and seniors, or juniors and seniors tend to be preferred, but there are internships specifically for freshmen and sophomores that you can find as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for FTE, I guess I want to mention too, for FTE, it's important to include that graduation date, because if we know you're graduating like in May right now, and a hiring manager is looking to hire somebody in the next few months, more often than not, if it's the right candidate, they'll hold off and give you that offer for upon graduation, like contingent on your graduation date. So that's why that's so critical. I really want to emphasize that, because I feel like a few candidates that probably would have been rock stars maybe have lost a chance simply because of not including a month.
Good to know. Yes, month and year on your expected graduation. Thank you. Okay, I'll turn it over to Mike, who's going to help us with these chat questions.
Hey team, yeah, a few of the questions were answered just either organically in the answers or in the chat. I'm glad we talked a lot about the freshman sophomore competitiveness. Maybe if the panelists could just speak to some other experiences like nonprofit. I think Tom, you may have touched on this, but nonprofit. What about volunteering? How far does that go on a resume?
Well, for PG&E, it goes pretty far. In fact, during the summer, our interns, we've got a relationship with the Special Olympics of Northern California, and every year we show up and volunteer our time. All the interns are paid for their time. All of our internships are paid throughout the summer, 40 hours a week, Monday to Friday, in a hybrid environment, and super important for us because of our purpose, right? Connecting with our hometowns, serving our customers, and so for us, it's pretty big.
Same. I mean, if you have the same resume as somebody else and you have volunteer experience, you're going to be interviewed first. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, very important.
Same.
So volunteer.
Sounds good. Yeah.
It's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah, having some sort of experience, whether it's, leadership, volunteering, something that's going to show your people skills is important in addition to your technical skills.
Yep. Another question around what to include in the resume in terms of, is it strictly work that is completed or if something is ongoing?
I've seen resumes before where, and also talked to potential interns that didn't have completed projects or products that were launched before their internship was completed. And I think that's fine. I think what's important to know is what impact you made during the time that you were there, 2 to 3 months. What did that look like? What did you work on? What component, right? What did the team dynamic look like? And it kind of goes back to what Tom had talked about, the STAR interview method is, even though that product wasn't launched, there was still an impact that you made. And just be confident in the work that you've done to know what that is.
I would add to that for master's students who do a capstone, if they're applying in the fall or in the spring, they have to put their capstone in, even though it's not completed. So often it's necessary.
I've heard in an interview, the question asked like, all right, so this project's not completed, this app's not finished being developed, like what roadblocks do you foresee happening and how do you plan on tackling those roadblocks upon completion? And that was a very powerful way for the candidate to express what they're capable of, express like their knowledge of this and that and the other thing. And the hiring manager was super impressed and ended up going with that candidate. So.
Nice.
And then last question is just when is the right time to apply to internships? So now we're in the spring recruiting season. Is there typically one that's better than the other?
So for Pacific Gas and Electric, we start in the fall as early as September with our rotation and internship program, and it will stretch through the holiday period. Go to a kind of a slow point right after the holiday, and then we get the late bloomers, so to speak, all the other departments that say they want an intern, and so justification comes up, and then we get this flood. So you'll see with us, we'll see probably about another 100 or so interns start to develop on our career site. You can go to PG&E Careers, and you'll start to see those internships populate in the next probably 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and they'll cascade through probably March and April.
For WISE, we always have applied scientist and research scientist internships. So for us, we're always interviewing for those 2 roles, and we always will have internship opportunities for our AI team.
For us, it is ongoing all the time. Whenever a department or a team needs an intern, wants an intern, then it goes through the process. And like I've hired for interns the past few months that will start in June when like the actual full-blown program is. It's a 10-week summer program, but also like hired for part-time starting next week where they're working 10 hours a week before the full-blown program in the summer. So it's ongoing at SAP at least, but I would say the majority post between end of February through like April, and it's ongoing every day. It just posts as they come. So.
For those that are interested with Pacific Gas and Electric, I did drop in a LinkedIn page. It's dedicated for university programs and emerging talent, and it highlights the partnerships that we have, where we're going to be on campus and off campus, virtual events. And then we also will post, if you follow us, you'll get an email saying a new posting. And so on social media, we'll be posting our positions for summer internships and early talent. So easy way to follow us without going to the website every single time, just shows up on your iPhone or Android.
Yeah, and generally what we see in the Career Center, larger companies tend to recruit in the fall, smaller companies, startups in the spring, but there's variation there. It's not always going to be the case, but that's just kind of generally what we've observed looking at Handshake. So something to keep in mind, it's always good to get started with your search in the fall, but the spring, there's plenty of opportunities as well. So you're going to see a lot getting posted this month and up until the summer starts. And Karen, we have one question here for you in the chat. What kind of entry roles / freshman summer intern roles does WISE have?
Yes, absolutely. I was just responding to that. So for WISE, most of our opportunities start senior year. And the reason being is because for us, a lot of the technical roles are requiring a lot of impact and work, like 80% practical work and 20% mentorship. And so for us, we do need, if someone doesn't have internship experience, and they do need to have the upper level courses to be able to work on the products that they would be working on. So that's the only reason why we look for people that are in their senior year. And for the AI research and applied scientist roles, typically the students do need to be in the master's program because of how many publications they would be working on and the type of research work that they would be doing.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions? We have a little time left, so please put them in the chat if you have another question. If not, I'm thinking we could wrap up with everyone just kind of leaving your last pieces of advice generally for students in their job and internship search.
Never give up.
Oh.
Keep at it, keep studying, focus, school comes first, but start thinking about a summer internship and make sure it's the right company for you, right? Don't just do an internship to do an internship. You're not desperate. You're at a great school. You picked a great discipline. You're on the right track, but be selective on your internship experience. And please feel free to connect with me, reach out to me should anybody want to do a resume review or cover letter review or interview tips and tricks. We're in a whole virtual environment now, and that, with interviewing in some cases, so we can help you.
Absolutely. Definitely echoing what Tom had shared and just adding, be yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself and ask questions. Have your recruiter be your guide. We're here to help you. So if you're in an interview situation and you have questions, go out, reach out to that recruiter and just ask, what is the interview process like? What kind of questions do you think are going to pop up? What kind of technical assessments do you expect? And, have that recruiter be your guide through the journey and navigating through that interview process.
100%. I would only add to that, that's amazing. And take advantage of these resources. Like I'm seeing Mike put in different links you guys have access to at your school. Take advantage of that. And not only that, like the formal stuff their school offers, but reach out to upperclassmen that have been there, done that, right? They're your most valuable resource. Maybe people that have been graduated and working a few years that you have some sort of connection to. Reach out to those people. They're currently working in the field and they'll be able to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly about X, Y, and Z, right? Super valuable resource. So people say network in ways that maybe aren't traditional, like upperclassmen. Use them. Use the ones that are successful or you aspire to be like.
All right, we just got one more question. If you all are up for tackling that as our last one.
I'll go for it. I would say absolutely not. It's not a waste of time. No, I mean, at least the way we look at it, and I think Tom kind of also echoed this, was we hire interns with the hope of them being here year over year over year with the potential of FTE. Like we have a really, really nice conversion rate of our interns through FTE after they graduate. So it's never too early. I mean, the job description, at least for us, will typically say you need X, Y, and Z skills, and maybe those don't come till your junior or senior year. And only you can really know that based on the job description and your own personal experience. So if that's the case, obviously forgo that, applying to that role. But
very well
yeah,
said, Jesse.
apply. No, go for it. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Tom.
I echo that. Do apply your freshmen. I mean, we hire across the board, right? Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, graduate, PhD. So 100%, not a waste of time. Be selective. You know, if you don't feel like you have to do it, you know, in your freshman or sophomore year, but if there's an opportunity that comes and presents itself with a great company that you can see yourself in the next year, that's what you're there for. You're there to gain experience, but it's also to see if it's a good fit for you and the company for a potential future employer. And 80% of internship programs at enterprise companies are built as a pipeline for you, for us, for you to convert to an employee. And so
there's KPIs around that. Like we want that.
Yeah. And just to give you an idea, you know, the National Association of College Employers, there's an average conversion rate, and that average conversion rate is typically 55 to 56%. That's an average, right? For the general, for eligible eligible interns that can convert. So, you know, they're tracked. We look at it. It's a huge cost savings for the company. And it's also a great opportunity for you to find a company through an internship that'll match what you want to do.
Oh. Anybody want to tackle that unpaid internship question before we?
What do you think about asking for unpaid internships? You know, we pay all our interns. I think every intern should be paid. You're doing work. It's meaningful. It's valuable to the company. It's work product. We pay our interns. We pay benefits to our interns, holidays, and other associated benefits throughout the summer because it's important. Don't cut yourself short just to get an internship. That's my advice, but I'd love to hear from the panel.
Agreed. We pay all of our interns, and because we know that they're going to be making an impact. And we also, our conversion rate for interns to full-time opportunities is about 90%. So our goal in being able to have interns is to hire them all on full-time. So most of the time, all of our seniors end up receiving full-time offers upon graduation. So definitely, like what Tom said, you know your worth, and you're going to be making an impact, so you should get paid.
90% convert. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I totally second that. I mean, if there is something you generally want to learn more, maybe personal, that's up to you. But I think if you're working for somebody, and they should value you.
Definitely. I echo that as well.
I did both in college, paid and unpaid. Yeah.
But you know, an unpaid internship is a great way to build your skill set as well.
Sure.
So it'd be a good backup plan, in my opinion.
Absolutely, Reve.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are at 5 o'clock, so let's wrap up. Thank you again, panelists, for being here and giving your time and support to students. And thank you, students, as well, for being here, because I know you all have a lot on your plate, so it's not easy to attend these. I hope you all have a great evening.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.